This land that you have entrusted to us, we commit back to you and pray that you would restore and heal us. Heal our land, O Lord. Heal our land, O Lord. We stand guard and pray in the power of your name. Heal our land, O Lord. Heal our land, O Lord. Heal our land, O Lord. Stir up repentance and bring true forgiveness. Heal our land, O Lord.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another Canada Awakening Healing the Land telecast. We have been talking in recent episodes about a prophetic mantle that is getting louder on the earth and will increase in volume. This prophetic word is boldly declaring that God and not man is supreme, and that his kingdom will ultimately prevail over all other temporal kingdoms and authority structures of this age. Since our last episode, when we shared a video clip from the National Prayer Breakfast in Canada on May the 7th, 2024, when the Grand National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations, Cindy Woodhouse Nepanic, called her godly parents, Garnet and Lorette Woodhouse from the Fairford First Nation, to the podium, she wanted her mother to publicly share her faith before the 1,400 politicians, including the Prime Minister, and there were senators, ambassadors, and judges, as well as others. She wanted her mother to lead out in the Lord's Prayer in the Anishinaabe language, which she does every morning in the public school where she teaches in northern Manitoba. Since that event, there was another event that Grand Chief Cindy Woodhouse Nepanic was leading at the Assembly of First Nations annual convention in Montreal on July the 14th, 2024. She had invited opposition leader Pierre Poilievre to address the convention, and here is what he said in his very opening remarks.
And I'd like to thank your National Chief, Woodhouse, and members of the AFN, Chief in Assembly, youth, veterans, and those elders who have guided and prayed for a good assembly. Thank you in particular, National Chief, for inviting me here today, but also for taking the time to pray with myself and more importantly, my wife Anna, and to remind both of us that there is a creator of all things who imparts wisdom and guidance that we should seek every single day. Wisdom also comes from those who came before us, and that of course includes our first peoples who have been here since time immemorial. I want to thank and honor you for bringing thousands and thousands of years of ancestral history to this assembly.
One of the implications of the supremacy of God, our Creator, that we have looked at, flows out of the premise that God is not only the creator of all things, but also the owner of all things, and that he has placed humans here on earth as stewards and managers of his property. He will hold us accountable for that stewardship. Of course, the original stewards of Turtle Island were the indigenous peoples of the land. And now it is vital that we newcomers to the land partner with them in recognizing this deeply rooted connection to our land, reminding those in authority that they are not God, but that the true God is both the creator and the owner of the land. It is not a popular message, but it is true. As Elijah Harper said in his opening remarks at the Sacred Assembly on December the 6th, 1995, we have a responsibility to maintain the unity of this land and to sustain the environment. Our forefathers had difficulty understanding the concept of owning land. It is alien, like owning air, he said. But we understand the need to use the land for the benefit of everybody, not for greed. It has become more apparent that these things need to be resolved and that the political process has failed us. I believe that there is something missing, he said, which is the spiritual element. We noted that in the Reconciliation Proclamation that came out of the Sacred Assembly of 1995, that some of the most salient points are as follows. First, that we share as part of our common spiritual foundation the belief that the Creator God reigns supreme over all things and that the land on which we live was created for the benefit of all. We share the recognition that reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Canadians must be rooted in a spiritual understanding of land as a gift from the Creator God. We share an understanding that the starting point for healing and reconciliation lies in personal communion with the Creator God, and that while change must take place at all levels of society, it must be rooted most firmly in the communities. It also said that we share a commitment as individuals to seek the personal guidance and counsel of elders and spiritual leaders in order to walk more closely with the Creator God, and also that we share a commitment as church and faith communities to continue the process of healing and reconciliation with Indigenous peoples by providing the forums and the supports needed to heal the wounds created in the past. We share a commitment as First Nations, it said, and also as Indigenous communities and organizations to work towards healing and reconciliation within our own communities. What have some of the First Nations chiefs from time immemorial had to say about this concept of land ownership? It is documented of Chief Peguis that when issues of who owned the land came up, it was his view that it belonged to the Great Father up above, but that it could be loaned to Selkirk for a time as he particularly welcomed those needing refuge who were being persecuted and treated unjustly in other parts of the world. Chief Crazy Horse stated on September the 23rd, 1875, that one does not sell the land that people walk on. Chief Crowfoot of the Blackfoot tribe in the southern part of present-day Alberta and a signatory to Treaty Number 7 stated in 1877, he said, "Our land is more valuable than your money. It will last forever. It will not even perish by the flames of fire. As long as the sun shines and the waters flow, the land will be here to give life to men and animals. We cannot sell the lives of men and animals. It was put here by the Great Spirit, and we cannot sell it because it does not belong to us." The opening statements of the Declaration of First Nations, authorized by the Assembly of First Nations, says this about the people and the land. It states that we, the original peoples of this land, know that the Creator put us here. The Creator gave us laws that govern all our relationships to live in harmony with nature and mankind. The laws of the Creator defined our rights and our responsibilities. Those laws of the Creator can be summed up in the 7 teachings given to the First Nations elders from antiquity. Teachings on truth and love, respect, courage, honesty, humility, and wisdom. They are very similar to the 10 Commandments given to Moses and to the children of Israel, and can be summed up in the 2 great commandments to first of all love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and second to love your fellow human beings who have been created in God's image and likeness as you would love yourself. The Christian understanding of these laws is that while they are all holy and just and good, that the only way that they can be fulfilled is by the power of the Holy Spirit, who connects us to God, our Creator, and to one another with a bond of love that is eternal in the Father's forever family. These words of the law cannot be written upon stony hearts, but only upon hearts of flesh, tender hearts, hearts that can hear the voice of their Creator and allow Him to fulfill those laws in and through them. As Jeremiah the prophet had prophesied in Jeremiah 31, 33 and 34, "But this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says the Lord, that I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts. And I will be their God, and they shall be my people. No more shall every man teach his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for they all shall know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them, says the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity, and their sins I will remember no more." This covenant will be in the hearts of the people, not on stony tablets or on rocky soil. What does the Bible teach about the issue of God being both the creator and the owner of the land, and that the people who live in the land are stewards and managers of all His goods and property? The very first verse in the Bible, in Genesis 1:1, declares that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Speaking at the court in Athens in the first century, the Apostle Paul gave some understanding of the Creator God that they were worshiping in an impersonal and religious way. He said, "The God who made the world and all things in it, since He is Lord of heaven and earth, does not dwell in temples made with human hands, nor is He served by human hands as though He needed anything, since He Himself gives to all life and breath in all things. For from one man He made all the nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth. And He marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands." God did this so that they would seek Him and perhaps reach out for Him and find Him, though He is not far from every one of us. For it is in Him that we live and move and have our being, as some of your own poets have said, that we are His offspring. Then speaking to the people at Lystra, Paul said in Acts 14:15 to turn to the true and the living God, the one who made the sky and the earth and the sea and everything that is in them, who in generations gone by allowed all nations to walk in their own ways. And yet He did not leave Himself without witness, in that He did good and gave you rains from heaven and fruitful seasons, satisfying your hearts with food and gladness. Nature itself would teach us that God has been good to all people in past generations, and that He is impartial in His goodness to all. He makes the sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and He sends the rain on the just and on the unjust, causing the crops to grow and providing food and gladness of heart to all without discrimination. Human beings have both a spiritual and a physical side, and they were created to be a connecting link between the Father in heaven and Mother Earth. Humans are conduits to be a connecting link between the Father's unconditional love and the people on earth who are in pain and who are hurting. Humans are stewards to manage the earth wisely, recognizing that people and land are connected. There is a connection between the soul and the soil, the heart and the land. So the people and the environment will only be healed as the hurts and the wounds that have caused hearts to be broken are healed. The Father's heart is to heal the brokenhearted and to bind up their wounds by an unconditional love and forgiveness for all. In Psalm 147, 2 and 3, we read that the Lord builds up Jerusalem. He gathers together the outcasts of Israel. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. The earth is the soil into which seed is planted and is like the womb that brings to manifestation and to birth the seed that is planted inside of it. Did the earth create itself independently, or is the soil and the seed the same thing? No, they are not. The earth is the soil into which the seed of the Father's love has been planted and into the hearts of his children. That seed, like the seeds that produce grain and fruit and vegetables from the womb of Mother Earth, all need to be nurtured and cultivated and watered in order to produce. Similarly, the seed of God's Word is that is planted in the human hearts needs to be cultivated and watered in order to produce the fruit of the Spirit, so that God's life will manifest upon the earth. We as humans need to come to a realization that we are not independent or self-sufficient, that we are not our own, but that we have been bought with a price. The land that we steward and manage and are responsible for and responsible to develop is owned not by us, but by our Creator, and we have a responsibility to cultivate and to steward the environment so that it will produce and bring sustenance and meet the needs of every living thing and support the inhabitants of the earth. In Leviticus chapter 25, verse 23, we read that the land shall not be sold forever. For the land is mine where you are, but strangers and guests of mine. In all of the territory that you occupy, the land is to be redeemed. When Melchizedek, the king of Salem and the priest of the Most High God, met Abram after he defeated some of the kings of Canaan in order to rescue his nephew Lot, Melchizedek declared, "Blessed be Abraham of God Most High, the possessor of heaven and earth," in Genesis 14 and 19. In Exodus 19:5, God's word to the descendants of Abraham through Moses was that if you will obey my voice indeed and keep my covenant, then you shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. In Deuteronomy 10:14, we read, "To the Lord your God belong the heavens, even the highest heavens, the earth and everything in it." When David prayed a prayer of blessing upon his son Solomon near the end of his life, he prayed, "Yours, Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the majesty and the splendor, for everything in heaven and earth is yours. Yours, Lord, is the kingdom. You are exalted as head over all." That was in 1 Chronicles 29 and verse 11. And Asaph is speaking prophetically in Psalm 50, 10-12, when he declared, "From God's perspective, that every animal of the forest is mine, and the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know every bird in the mountains, and the insects in the fields are mine. If I were hungry, I would not tell you, for the world is mine, and all that is in it." All of these biblical references are summed up beautifully in Psalm 24 and verse 1, which declares that the earth is the Lord's, and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. And so the traditional chiefs and First Nations elders were in many ways closer to biblical truth than many Christians who would see themselves as owners of their property to do as they want, and not as the steward and the manager of the property of another, even the Creator, who wants us to reflect Him with our generosity, our sharing, our giving, and our investing in the needs of others. Divine ownership of the earth is not simply an Old Testament concept, but it is repeated in the New Testament as well in 1 Corinthians 10 and verses 26 and 28, where it says repeatedly that the earth is the Lord's. Most of us as New Testament Christians would agree that the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, in theory. But to actually embrace this in lifestyle is not something that is being tried and failed. Rather, it has been found difficult and left untried. It will take the transforming power of the Holy Spirit in our lives to learn the kingdom principle that as we pour out into others, that God will keep pouring back into us so that there will be no lack and there will not be a needy person among us. For New Testament believers to actually practice and act on the reality that the earth is the Lord's and that we are stewards of it, it took an outpouring of the Holy Spirit. For the believers to actually put into practice this truth, that the things that they possessed were not their own. They received an impartation of grace to freely share whatever they had to make sure that the most vulnerable among them were provided for, especially the widows, the orphans, the strangers, and the poor and the needy among them. Acts 4 and verse 31 declares that they were all filled with the Holy Spirit and they spoke the word of God with boldness. Then the very next verse in Acts 4 and verse 32 declares, and the multitude of them that believed were of one heart and of one soul. Neither said any of them that any of the things which he possessed was his own, but they had all things in common. The laws of the Creator on their own cannot produce this kind of generosity and other-centeredness in us, but only the life of the Spirit as he flows like a river from our innermost being. For what the law could not do, in that it was weak through the flesh, God sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin condemned sin in the flesh, that the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit, according to Romans chapter 8, 3 and 4. So please hear me accurately. I'm not at all saying that people today should just sell everything that they have and give it all away. I am talking about Spirit-led investment and generosity. The truth is that most of us in the church today do not have the grace to live this way because we are too self-centered, we are too selfish. And yet the New Testament talks about grace giving. That is giving that is beyond our natural ability, but giving that is empowered by the grace of God to go above and beyond what our natural mind would dictate. In the early church, it is important to note that there was an abundance of grace that was at work among them all. To become like them, we're going to need to grow in grace. We're going to need to become more gracious. We're going to need to become like Paul exhorted Timothy to be strong in the grace that is in Christ Jesus. Our flesh is weak, but the Spirit of God is a spirit of grace, and his grace has no limit, and his ability to bless has no measure. Most of us have barely scratched the surface when it comes to proving the grace of God, or proving giving by grace. But the early Christians experienced great grace, which is upon them all. Let's close with reading Acts 4:32, where it talks about believers not considering the things that they possessed as their own, within the larger context of Acts 4:32 to 34, that the community of believers was one in heart and mind. None of them would say, "This is mine," about any of their possessions, but they held everything in common. The apostles continued to bear powerful witness to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, and an abundance of grace was at work among them. There were no needy persons among them. This sounds to me like a far better social safety net than government welfare programs financed by taxation dollars that are not freely given. There is no joy in paying taxes, but there is joy in grace giving above and beyond our natural ability to meet the needs of others. This is something that we all need to grow in. And when Jesus returns, he wants to see an increase and a multiplication of what he has entrusted to us. Our eternal reward will depend on what we have done with what we have been entrusted and given. We will not be accountable to do something with things that we do not have, but only what we do with what we do have, and that will result in either increase or decrease in the kingdom of God and advancing that kingdom. May great grace be upon us all to advance his kingdom more and more. God bless you all.
Heal our land, O Lord. Heal our land, O Lord.
It has become more apparent that these things need to be resolved and that the political process has failed us. I believe there is something missing, which is the spiritual element.
It is the children of God that will carry the message to the political powers of this continent and other continents in order for them to understand what we must do as human beings in order for us to be healthy again.
Establish your kingdom throughout this nation and heal our land.